Hello, and very nice to have you with me again today. Today I'm going to be talking about the gospel section that you read in the 24th chapter of Luke's gospel, talking about the disciples that meet Jesus on the road to Emmaus. There are so many fascinating aspects to this story, but some that I think are of great importance for us to remember always in our lives. It's interesting that these two disciples referred to in the story are on their way back from Jerusalem to Emmaus, walking along the road. And obviously, as the story goes, they'd been to a meeting of the believers and were still confused about what exactly was happening with Jesus and with his resurrection and so on. And why this is interesting is that obviously Jesus said, where two or three are gathered in my name, he would have been with that group when they were with them. He also comes to just them. And I'm saying just them because they aren't referred to when the group is spoken about earlier, about the people who are together. They're just two disciples among the many disciples. And very much as we sometimes experience our lives, they're walking along talking about, we've heard this has happened. Some woman in our group say that he's risen from the dead, that they've had contact with him, and so on, and we don't know what to think anymore. And they're trying to work this out between themselves, exactly what is going on, which obviously must have been very confusing to them. To us, we've always heard about Jesus having risen from the dead. To them, it was something completely unheard of. And so it would have been rather confusing for them. But the important point is that Jesus is not only with them in that big group, he's with the two of them walking along the road, talking about Jesus and trying to understand something of his life, of what was going on with his resurrection and so on. It's also interesting, almost sort of comical in a way, as Luke recounts, that when Jesus does come and walk with them, they're unable to recognize him. And when he asks what they're talking about, and they say, you must be the only person in Jerusalem who doesn't know what's going on in these days. And it is actually quite funny to think that they say to him, you don't know what went on when he was the main figure in it all. But you see, Jesus goes on to help them understand that why it was so confusing to them is because they were still holding on to their preconceived notion of what Jesus' coming was all about. We could say, to take a rather current term, we could say that they thought that he was all about MEGA, make Israel great again type of a thing, that they thought he was coming to make Israel the greatest nation on earth. They'd missed the point of the Messiah's coming. They'd missed the point that actually he was coming for a completely different purpose altogether, to bring us something far greater than that could ever have been. And this is why they were battling to understand. It's interesting that he then sets about explaining to them where in their own scriptures everything was written. This was all foretold. And we too have this, that in our scriptures, God has warned us and told us about so many things that can make our lives more difficult, and yet we don't get it. We still hold on to other things. We still start to think, well, but what if, but what about what this person, what about what we heard here, what about what we saw there? And this Jesus is trying to show them that it was all laid out there for them in the scriptures. If they had have understood the scriptures, if they had have really known the scriptures, this whole mystery of what this whole resurrection, this whole event was about, wouldn't have happened to them. And so it's very much, as I say, as happens to us in our everyday lives. They then really still don't know who he is, and they invite him in to spend the evening there, because they say it's evening is here, you might as well stay over. And he comes in, and when he breaks bread with them, when he has communion with them, their eyes are opened and they suddenly realize who he is and just what it is that he has brought them. And here we find something stunning when they say, didn't our hearts burn in us when he was explaining the scriptures to us. And here I want to talk about the difference between belief and faith. Because you see, when you believe something, if you think about it carefully, you'll realize that believing something is not a choice on your part. It's very much like loving. It comes from inside. And somehow you believe that for you that is true. Something resonates inside of you and you just say, exactly. I remember one such occasion, just for example, of listening to a rabbi speaking on a YouTube video, and they were contesting whether God was omnipotent or not. And he said that God is omnipotent, but that doesn't mean that he exercises his omnipotence at all times. Just as if a father were to exercise his strength at all times when helping his children to grow, they would learn nothing. And it was one of those moments when, yes, I knew that was true. That was the answer. And so, as I say, this is the difference between belief and faith. The things that we don't know as a belief yet, we accept on faith, in saying, even though I don't have that interior certainty that this is true, because of who has said so, I will accept it as being true, as if I did have that internal certainty, and that would be faith. And so, as I say, we have these two things, belief and faith, that really go together, and the one feeds the other. These two are then so moved inside that the first thing they think about is going and sharing this experience with those who will understand them. And this is a very important step in our lives, to share with those who will understand us, so that we can gain in self-assurance, in self-confidence, to be able to go and share with people who are only hearing this for the first time, or who need to grow from what we have experienced. And there they come to this fullness of the thing. Yes, Jesus has risen, and he's appeared to Peter and so on. But this whole change in their lives, as soon as they were able to see God's plan for what it is, they could grow that much in their lives, and that belief could come into their hearts and become a real thing for them. And so I pray that your relationship with God may grow also ever stronger in talking about him, talking about the things you don't understand about Christ, about God's plan for the world, and so on. That this may all come into your realm of belief, and not merely faith, but faith also where belief lacks. And may God bless you. Thank you.